Hello, and thanks for joining us for this webinar on modernizing your IT stack with cloud-native architecture using Salesforce and AWS. Today we have three panelists, including myself. So Bob Woodlansky, I'm from AWS Strategy and Business Development Group, Principal BD, and today I've got Skip Roncal with me, who's the global lead for Salesforce and AWS solutions at Salesforce. And then Stephen Koval, who's head of group IT strategy, architecture, and business analytics at Liberty Latin America. So gentlemen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Bob.
So we've got four topics to cover today, four key items. First, we're going to give an intro to the overall Salesforce and AWS partnership, and then give an overview of the Salesforce AWS Unified Developer Experience, talk more about the digital transformation at Liberty Latin America, and dive into that use case with Stephen and Skip, and then a conclusion and Q&A we'll have between Skip and Stephen. Over the past 5 years of working with Amazon, I've had the pleasure of working closely with Salesforce on our partnership efforts nearly that entire time. And I started out working on ways to improve our secure private networking via Salesforce Private Connect, AWS Private Link, and then worked on connectors between the platforms using Amazon AppFlow and MuleSoft, and that grew as I was here into something much bigger. And we now have a multi-year strategic partnership in place with a number of efforts, really all designed to help our customers innovate using Salesforce and AWS together. So on the left side of the chart, you'll see we've developed an entire unified developer experience to empower our builders to streamline the development process of using Salesforce and AWS together. It encompasses data integration and virtualization to speed the development process and native eventing in order to facilitate real-time workflows between the products, as well as facilitation of big data analytics and insights. And then on the right side of the chart, you'll see we've grown our suite of intelligent industry applications from where we started a few years ago, working together on contact center transformation using Service Cloud Voice and Amazon Connect, to a broader portfolio of intelligent applications. So including our Health Cloud Virtual Care, which is powered by Amazon Chime, and then intelligent document automation as well, powered by Amazon TextStract. Okay, so just a few additional details on the unified developer experience, some of which Stephen and Skip will further highlight in our example on Liberty. We've empowered developers on AWS and Salesforce in four key areas. So first of all, simplification of authentication and identity, making it easier to sign in from Salesforce into AWS and vice versa. Second, we've made it easier to build modern applications faster. So by enabling virtualization of data on AWS for use within the Salesforce Lightning tools, point-and-click development tools. And then third, we've unleashed the power of data with real-time events, making it easier to move events between Salesforce and AWS, and simplified data integration. And finally, we deployed Code Builder, a Salesforce-optimized development environment that's powered by AWS tools in the browser. So I'm going to pass now our presentation on to Skip to talk to you a little bit more about some of the Salesforce and AWS integration patterns that we see.
Thanks, Bob. Stephen, it's great to be here with you. Yeah, across our customer bases, that would be AWS and Salesforce, our mutual customers, we very often see these 5 integration patterns being the top patterns that people are pursuing. And I would suggest that maybe these are probably the 5 most common patterns of any project. One of the overriding goals really is to reduce the cost to deploy our mutual platforms. And that really is the mission of this partnership. So when we look across these patterns, kind of reading left to right, there's the obvious analytics, right? What do we know about our business? But more specifically, what do we know about our business when we consider all of the data sources that really drive our business forward? So this could be real-time data, transactional data. We're basically gathering the data from across multiple data sources. Most recently, I've been working on an IoT infrastructure project, so IoT data would clearly be fit into this category where you might want to understand the sensor data coming out of that environment, bringing it into CRM. So analytics is a big integration pattern category. This kind of dovetails into marketing technology, or MarTech as we refer to it, right? So when we bring this data in the domain of CRM, we're really trying to understand more about our customers. So how do all these disparate databases really enrich what we know about or the profile of our customer in such a way that we can provide better service, better engagement? And this includes gathering data from your data lake and then maybe ingesting that into your customer data platform, or in our case, the marketing cloud, so that you could create journeys based on that enriched data. Obviously, the most common is integration. So how do we connect systems together? And so when we look at the integration patterns, there's clearly Amazon Connect. We want to be able to visualize the data sometimes, right? So when we think about analytics, that's very often visualization, but we need to integrate that data into whatever our BI tool or our visualization tool is. In our case, right, we would be looking at Tableau on AWS, for example. And so that would give us the opportunity to visualize the data about our customers, about our business. We also want to talk about virtualization. We don't want to bring all of that data into Salesforce. Sometimes we just need to go and collect the data and present it to the user in such a way that he or she can make a decision. And this can be anyone from line of business to VPs and decision makers of those OUs, right? They need to be able to have the data, but we don't want to burden the CRM system with that data necessarily, so we'll virtualize that data. And of course, there's eventing, which I think is very, very interesting, right? If we can start to really understand the streaming data coming off of these large platforms to understand our customers better, I think that's a big win. Compute, I think that's probably what most people think of when they think about AWS services. How do I take really complex compute problems and derive an outcome from them at scale, at internet scale, not just at enterprise scale, but at internet scale? And I think that's the thing that most people probably think about. And so we can do that, right? So if you're inside of a Salesforce implementation, whether it's telco and you need to go process service availability, and maybe that data is on a mainframe, or maybe there's some algorithm, some logic that needs to be computed in order to determine whether or not you can deliver service, or if that product's available, if it's feasible to deliver it there. Maybe we do that with the compute pattern. And then finally, probably the most talked about pattern that's getting a lot of airtime across domains is AI ML. So how do we take advantage of the AWS AI ML services? And I think Stephen's going to talk about this. How do we use SageMaker, the models that we have, or bring your own model to this equation, and then really enrich the CRM deployment through AI ML. And so these are the 5 most common integration patterns we see across our mutual customers. So again, they're analytics, MarTech, integration, compute, and AI ML. So Stephen, if we can turn it over to you, maybe you can share some information about Liberty.
Thank you, Bob and Skip, for the introductions. So if we can go to the next slide about Liberty Latin America, to give you an idea or an understanding about the markets that we operate in. We're a full service telco provider of both fixed telephony, fixed broadband, mobile broadband, video, and we operate undersea cable throughout our region. We work in the Caribbean. We have many islands there, over 20 plus consumer markets, 30 plus business markets through Latin America and the Caribbean and the United States, meaning Puerto Rico. So we have a large consumer base. We have a lot of data centers in our region. We've grown through a lot of mergers and acquisitions and organic growth. So we have got a lot of challenges with regards to our footprint, with regards to infrastructure and running applications accordingly to service our customers. And so as part of the M&A, we've inherited a lot of legacy platforms that drives the complexities, the risks, and the costs for our business. And so we have a huge amount of system diversity. We have got 10 types of different systems for billing and provisioning type. And in some cases, in some markets, we've got 2 or 3 of them in that market, each of them focused upon a different service. One system could be very focused upon mobile billing. Another one could be on fixed billing. And these systems are monolithic. What I mean by monolithic is that they're, order through cash from the customer administration screens all the way through to the provisioning processes and the revenue management. It's a silo of applications. In some, we've got at least 30 plus of these platforms in our markets. And, the complex integrations that we need to go through in order to try to bring together things like fixed mobile convergence or adding new over-the-top content providers and other services. We've been very successful with using middleware to integrate these platforms and to simplify them towards other external parties. But the integrations below that we with the various different BSS systems is quite complex, depending upon the type of platforms and the service that we're trying to introduce. And this is leading to like a lot of limited orchestration, where when we're trying to provision a customer of their mobile account, as well as their fixed business, as well as their over-the-top video, because they're served on different platforms, they're being provisioned independently, and that can cause a problem when there's a fault about how to recover from those kinds of situations and put them together. So it's a big limitation. And all of this just has a complete impact on our time to market, because it takes a lot of different skill sets on the different platforms to come together in order for us, depending upon which market it's going to be, what's the particular service, how is that service going to be bundled together, and then the pricing structure for them. So this impacts our time to market. To get a little bit more detail about these types of systems, this is an example of just some of our 10 of our different types of platforms here to show you how they are monolithic and servicing one particular area. For our mobile business and is governed by one main platform, and in markets it's not necessarily the entire thing for for HFC, for cable TV type of provisioning. And they stand from the customer administration to creating an order, breaking down that order, through the pricing catalog of that particular instance, and eventually getting through to the provisioning system to provision that particular service. So when you look across, and we have to do a prepaid product with a fixed product, we then have to integrate those two particular systems together to produce that bundled result. And then there's a lot more complexities about how do we maintain that service over its time? What happens when a customer drops one particular part of the service? How does it affect the other platform? It creates a lot of complexity for those integrations for us. And it's constraining us. We've been very successful with using MuleSoft to integrate these platforms together and enable our digital transformation that we've undergone, where we've been able to provide e-commerce to our consumers in several markets. And we present through the MuleSoft layer upward, a single interface, while underneath we hide the complexity of all the different integrations with the southbound platforms. However, there are limitations. We can basically spend a lot more investment time to try to make these platforms work, more efficiently and provide an omni-channel experience, because for now, with all these different systems, we're unable to do things like a customer starting off an e-commerce order and decide that they would like to actually visit the shop and actually see perhaps the phones of what they want to order and make sure that they're going to get it that day. It may have taken a lot of time to implement or put their data in on the e-commerce site, show up at the store, and because they're disparate systems and they're using another system, they can't pick up the order and complete the order for the customer at that point in time. So this, is the graphical part here, shows that going from channel to channel is not something that we're able to do today through this omni-channel experience. We are satisfying different parts, but it's a limitation. We could get past it. It'll just take some more further, deeper investment to do this, but it's time for us to rethink about where, our approach on this. So we set off to meet our business objectives, which was to be prepared for more mergers and acquisitions, be able to deploy new services more rapidly, reduce our costs overall, and reduce the skill sets that we need to run the various systems. Additionally, we need to get data integration between these platforms. In a lot of our legacy platforms, we're working in a batch style, which is 24 to 48 hours before data is arriving that we can then have actionable events from. So we went back and looked at the modern architectures about how we could utilize cloud first approach to rapidly get our program off the ground. And we evaluated many vendors that all just happened to also be hosted on AWS, which just sort of complemented our strategy with regards to having data integration on our data lake and make it much more easier. We started off in Puerto Rico, where we're going live with bringing in our customers onto the new platform there, as well as Costa Rica, where we have some acquisitions that we're going to be bringing onto the new platform. It's our intent to then continue to roll it out in the Caribbean, the Cable and Wireless Group, and then into Panama and wherever else that takes us in our business plans. All this is to better serve our customers and to deliver a better product and services.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Stephen. I love this project. I probably love it for all the reasons that you hate it, which is I love the complexity of your program. What I mean by that is that, we've been working together for about 3.5 years now. And when we first started talking, you shared some of your diagrams with me, and I was just astounded by the complexity and all the legacy applications that you had. And it just, it was something that I couldn't stop thinking about. The fact that you had to unify your architecture, you had a strategy to be cloud first, and you wanted to continue to evolve the services that you delivered to your customers across that geographical span. And that's a challenge in a single market, and it's an extraordinary challenge in a market, a 30 geography market. So, thanks for sharing the story. I really enjoy it every time we go through this. I've put together some questions for Bob and I to ask you, and so I may read them off to you. I think that there won't be any surprises here, given that we've known each other for so long and been involved on the sidelines. But in your introduction, you really talked about how Liberty is basically you continue to be engaged in M&A activity, and that results in inheriting a lot of legacy systems. Some of them are custom built specifically for the target geographies. So when you think about that, what are the key challenges you seek to integrate these companies and specifically the systems?
Mm-hmm. In some of these applications, they have no APIs. We have one particular platform that has no API capability. We're unable to integrate it in and provide a self-care, for example, off that platform. It's come built into the platform, and it's not sufficient for what our needs are today, as well as also on the sales side. So we go from an extreme like that to platforms that that are fully integrated, all these functionalities and components together. And while one component may be just fine for particular functions, other components just can't handle it further. There's no way to get them to get a work around them because they're all integrated together. They don't expose these particular things. So that's what limits us on these legacy applications. Then, they've also pretty old. I mean, we have our own internal billing platform that is COBOL based for 30 years, and it's running on VMS on dedicated hardware. And while we do have control, we've been able to API it and open it up, but it takes further investment costs for us to do this. As I was saying before, we've done as much as we can with the MuleSoft integration layer to be able to do some new services and create fixed mobile convergence. You have to understand that many of these acquisitions, each company was focused upon a particular service, such as cable TV or mobile services, and they came with their own platform that was dedicated for that particular purpose. So that's what hinders us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. No, go ahead.
one of the things that we find with these platforms is that they're address centric. So it means that when a customer leaves an address, we lose track of them. It's about the address, not about the customer. Now, as you know, our modern day today, that we're looking to be much more customer centric and focused. So how do we move from this type of platform to a customer centric system?
Right. So just modernizing the integration of that data out of those legacy systems into your new kind of cloud first stack is a big win, right? I mean, especially for those systems that have no APIs, you have to build a wrapper almost, right?
Correct.
Organizations across the globe are struggling with skills, like skills of employing people with the right skills. In your case, you're talking about an organization that's acquired technologies that are sometimes decades old. The people that were in the market to build, maintain those systems are no longer in the market. When you think about how skills impact your ability to deliver, how does a cloud-first strategy, if at all, help address aspects of this skill shortage?
Well, one of the things that we find with the cloud-based approach is that there's a lot more skill and more resources out there that we can tap into. Besides the fact that SaaS-based applications are coming with operational support already embedded in part of the service. So we're challenged with keeping up our day-to-day, what we call business as usual, with our own resources and maintaining all these variety of platforms and trying to deliver upon all the new commercial offers that the business is throwing at us, swamps us. So where do we find the time to upskill those employees onto the newer technology is a challenge. And that's where the cloud first approach, where infrastructure is already being managed from, let's say, AWS, where we're not have to bring in people to support that. Or same thing with the CRM of Salesforce, where we're not having to have database administrators managing the Salesforce platform. We've been able to have an instant on aspect. So when we launched this program, we're able to quickly fire up an environment, whether that is an AWS environment to install software on, an application that we're going to manage, or firing up an instance from Salesforce or another SaaS-based provider and integrating that together.
Yeah, I'm sure it also helps, and this is maybe true of a lot of companies, right? Both AWS and Salesforce also deliver portals to educate your staff, individuals, groups of individuals on the technology. It's hard for individuals to keep up with innovation that companies like Salesforce and AWS bring to market. So it's critical to our business to ensure that we're providing you mechanisms for learning our tech. So it's clear from your re-architect for growth diagram that you chose kind of best of breed for some of your most critical functions, right? So building, charging with Matrix, integration to the customer experience, which is the Salesforce integration, and that all of those were kind of critical to your success, right? Addressing kind of the touch points that the customer is engaged with your organization. But what about the infrastructure? What were the key considerations given the geographical scope of your deployment or of your business?
Now, this was a very important function for us. The latency that's needs to be very low. We're moving into 5G requirements now, and therefore, where the integration between the platforms that provide your switching for your voice and mobile connections needs to be very low latency. So therefore, yes, using the cloud is fantastic to get going and starting off with, but it could be too far away. One of the things that we came across with AWS in our investigation, and we found the AWS Outpost, which was able to be deployed in market on the island next to the switch to achieve that low latency and reduce the risk between applications running across undersea cables. We run into hurricanes and a lot of other complexities in our market. We once lost a cable to lava flow on one island. So we need to be prepared for that. We found that the AWS Outpost was, enabled us to bring that low latency, lower that risk, But at the same time, because we started off with AWS North American Cloud, we were able to start the program off and get the vendors working to integrate and verify that the integration patterns were working, connectivity was there, and we began to develop and test. And as we move into production on the island, it simplifies our world. So this hybrid approach has been very important to us.
And remind me, I know I saw the diagram, but the two implementations of Outpost are there two implementations?
Yes, one is in Puerto Rico, where the Outpost is in on island. The second one will be in Costa Rica. Again, we've got a lot of cable that goes there, but we have to manage that risk and the latency.
Thanks. So how did I know that you were probably customers of both platforms, right? But how did you land on AWS and Salesforce as being your kind of cloud first strategy, the kind of two pillars of your strategy for?
So we had started off with Salesforce already for our B2B business that we were quite accustomed to throughout all of our markets and in a unified approach. We've been using AWS for our data lake and all other data warehousing applications. So it became this kind of natural fit as we look between the two of them. Some of the tooling that we would need to integrate the data and to migrate data onto this platform, we found with the AWS environment. For example, we've built a whole migration framework using AWS tools such as Lambda and Redshift and DynamoDB, for example, going into AppFlow in order to load the data into the Salesforce application. So it became this kind of natural fit as things were coming together. And because we selected these best of breed applications through an RFP and found that they were already on AWS, it just became kind of, critical mass coming together really of this just all makes sense. When we look at the data integrations, the security that the overall architecture would have, and be able to use monitoring tools from AWS for CloudWatch across all these different applications began to create that, a simplified approach for us.
Sure, yeah, thanks. This actually, if we kind of think back to the slide we presented earlier around the 5 integration patterns, and you may have answered this, but of those 5, when you think about your deployment to date and maybe what you're planning, is there any one of those 5 that really is an accelerator for your business? Remember MarTech, integration, compute.
Yeah, no, let me elaborate a little bit further there. Because again, all that data is going to be coming in a streaming way. For example, we are integrating 2 of these applications because they're using streaming data integrations through Kafka. We're using an AWS component, MSK, to integrate those 2 together, and then it's feeding into the data lake all naturally. Same thing with Salesforce, bringing in real-time data into the data lake. And that's where the data integration really plays into things like, where we're looking at evaluating next about CDP in order to do actionable events, in real time. I mean, today we already work with SageMaker on AWS, and we, make marketing pitches to our consumers, most specifically in the prepaid market where it needs to be real time. We're analyzing their usage patterns and fitting that into this model, which is then coming back out to the customer, offering more tailored solutions for them.
Yeah, thanks for elaborating on that. So we've basically been talking about the AWS platform, right? And so I wonder if maybe we just kind of segue for a second to think about, as you work backwards from the customer experience, what about Salesforce Industries, or formerly known Velocity Communications Cloud? What about that application suite drove you to choose it for your customer experience, customer engagement across your regions?
No, it's a very good point that you raised, Skip, because it was a really key aspect of launching Salesforce for the B2C market. Everybody had, our organization was very much that Salesforce was for B2B only, effectively. When we came across Velocity, we began to see the dimension of going for the B2C, the consumer base, and the performance requirements that are going to be necessary to support that and the catalog and the type of products more tailored for telco than, let's say a flat catalog. So for example, Velocity's EPC was something very important to us, as providing a catalog that was, structured for a telco. There's a retail type of catalog for merchandise such as t-shirts, very simplistic. In the telco world, the bundling and the optional products, the bolt-ons, the rules behind, whether or not you can apply that bolt-on to a certain group, if you've got bundle what, and how do you migrate from bundle A to bundle B, is quite complex. And Velocity was one of those key things or applications that said, this could actually make this really work. And we set off to evaluate that.
No, that's helpful. Thanks. When you go through that T-shirt example, I think of there's typically not a COM and a SOM associated to a T-shirt fulfillment, right? You've got your commercial order, and then you've got your commercial order. And unless you're making it, one-off in a bespoke fashion, it's pretty simple fulfillment process.
No, you're absolutely right, because there's some complexities. Obviously, when a customer wants to change their package, they don't want to be deprovisioned for 10 to 15 minutes and lose all their service and their connectivity just because they're changing their platform, the product that they're using. So that's where it's very important about the SOM and the COM layers that evaluate what are the changes that are necessary in order to affect this change. So.
Yeah, we as consumers just assume that you're going to have it all done. We don't have to worry about anything, that we don't have any trouble calling our families. Mm-hmm. So you've been involved in a ton of deployments. I know some of your history, it's pretty amazing. But large organizations go through periodic large deployments, require a lot of expense, a lot of people. It involves business and IT, and typically they're evolutionary, right? Because of the size of your organization. We leave disruption to the smaller players for the most part. But as a business leader, you need to make decisions about what you prioritize for today, the near term, et cetera. And so I wonder, with that in mind, what are you looking forward to delivering in the future? And how do you think AWS and Salesforce can help you achieve that vision or that roadmap?
Where we go from here, we have a lot more other things that we look to modernize. For example, in our contact center support, and where we've got still some legacy applications that are on-prem that are not modern, and we are in that process of evaluating on the cloud-based contact center as a service, CCaaS, and where we begin to looking at Salesforce voice cloud along with Amazon Connect, and how that can actually come together. It's important to have more automation happening. So for example, when a customer calls in, we need to be able to start evaluating what our needs are based upon the types of questions they're asking, and the services that they're looking for, or help that they need. Not always that it's going to be captured by the, let's just say, the call result that the CSR will close out the contact from. We need to be able to go back and look at, what was the sentiment of the call? What was the type of thing? Did it match what the call resolution ended up becoming? And be able to process that data, put it into our data lake, and begin to analyze it to look for patterns with our consumers where we may be having difficulties, or the positive sides too as well.
Right, I think voice really opens up a lot of opportunities, especially if you start to think about your use of SageMaker, and as you mentioned, the data lake. Sentiment is absolutely one thing that you have to be aware of, especially as you grow at the pace that you do and across the regions that you do. Yep. There's also translation, although that may not be as big of an issue, but when you think about Service Cloud Voice and Amazon Connect, some of the translation capabilities for those multinational organizations that have, predominant language contact centers, and you need to have translation in real time. And then if you can automate around that real time translation, I think is going to be very cool for customer service. So, well, those are all the questions I had. Bob, did you want to wrap us up?
Sure. So thanks, Skip. Thanks, Stephen, for that really fantastic, multifaceted example. And we'll be eager to see how you move forward in the future with Service Cloud Voice and other solutions. And for those of you in our audience here who want to learn more about what you can do with Salesforce and AWS together, we'd encourage you to please schedule unified developer experience customer briefing with your account representative, and we'll look forward to speaking with you in person if possible. And you can also learn more by going to the sites here below. We've listed here a link to the Salesforce partnership page on the Amazon website, and you can learn more about Liberty Latin America as well at the URL located there at lla.com. So thanks again, Skip and Stephen. Thanks to those of you who've joined us today.
Thank you.
Bob and Skip, appreciate it.